This video will help you to prepare your paper before submitting to the Essex Student Journal. During this video, submission types for the Essex Student Journal and the differences between them will be explained. Practical tips for preparing your paper for submission will then be shared before the publishing process for the Essex Student Journal will be outlined. First, let's look at the types of submissions we accept for the Essex Student Journal. When writing, there are several genres to be considered. In basic terms, the genres can be divided into fiction and non-fiction. At the Essex Student Journal, we typically only accept submissions of non-fiction. However, we may put out specific calls for papers for special issues for fiction writing in the future. When it comes to non-fiction, we generally accept three types of publication. These types of publications are research papers, essays, and case studies. Let's have a look at each of those in more depth. When writing an essay, it's important to remember that you're writing your ideas on the topic, so your voice must shine through. You are saying something for yourself, working with others' ideas to formulate your own judgments. In an essay, each section or paragraph should raise a different point that contributes towards the overarching argument. The author of an essay needs to guide the reader, and each paragraph needs to lead directly on to the next. When writing an essay, there will be an introduction and a conclusion, with the main body of paragraphs coming in between. Essays can be further divided into three main types based on the purpose of the writing. A descriptive essay is used to describe something. This could be an object, place, sequence of events, process, and more. Descriptive essays can also describe and explain. Argument essays are used to explore arguments. They can present balanced views, can be persuasive, or can represent arguments based on to what extent statements. Compare and contrast essays are used to compare, contrast, or a combination of both. All three types of essay need to have an overarching argument running throughout. The second format of submission we accept is a research paper. This is the traditional format for an academic journal article and is generally used to report research findings. Research papers are therefore common in sciences, business, and social sciences. Research papers have clear sections throughout. These generally include an introduction outlining why the research has been done and the purpose of the paper, a literature review to represent the current picture of the research area, a description and critical analysis of methods, including why these methods have been chosen, a description of results or findings, including presentation of any data, whether quantitative or qualitative, a discussion of the findings to show how conclusions have been drawn and to highlight any potential limitations of the research, a conclusion to draw together overall findings and what your results suggest for the field or practice. The third format of submission we accept are case studies. Case studies are in-depth studies of real-world problems. Case studies start with a problem to solve and lead the reader through the investigation, which is described and evaluated to get to a solution. There are generally three purposes for case studies, as described by Yin, 2011. These three purposes are exploratory, where the author looks for patterns in data and tries to come up with a model to view the data through. Research questions for this type usually focus on what. For example, what are the ways to get more submissions for the Essex Student Journal? Descriptive, where the author tries to obtain information on the specific features of an issue. Research questions often still use what, but take it a step further. For example, what have been the effects of getting more submissions for the Essex Student Journal? Explanatory, where the author tries to analyse or explain why or how something happens or happened. Research questions likely use how or why. For example, why did promoting previous papers published with the Essex Student Journal lead to more submissions? This table summarises the three types of submissions we generally accept for the Essex Student Journal. You can see the information from this table on our Essex Student Journal submissions page. Our submission page also contains the full submission guidelines for the Essex Student Journal. Before preparing your paper to submit to the journal, please ensure you have read the guidelines thoroughly. Matching your paper to the style of the journal you are submitting to is crucial for success when having your work published. Please also make sure to use the template document provided on the Submissions Guidelines page. You can copy and paste your work into the template, but make sure the formatting remains the same as the template. If you have any questions about this, do get in touch. You will also see on the submissions guideline page that all referencing for the Essex Student Journal needs to be in the standard Harvard format. A link to guidance on using this format can be found in our submission guidelines page. On rare occasions, such as if a paper is using legal texts, we will also accept our Scholar referencing. When submitting your paper to the Essex Student Journal, a key difference between this piece and your original essay or assignment is the audience. While your original audience is likely to have been your lecturer or tutor, who will be very familiar with the subject of your paper, when submitting your work to the Essex Student Journal, the audience is much broader. Because of this, you'll need to make some tweaks and potentially additions to your original work before it's ready to submit to the journal. Firstly, have a look at your title. For a published paper, a good title should let the reader know what they should expect from the paper, capture the reader's attention, and avoid using jargon that won't be understood. Manage the expectation of the reader through reflecting the tone of the writing, thus ensuring the title fits the paper. Include important keywords from the paper, as this makes it easier for your paper to be found in literature searching. A good rule of thumb for the length of a title is 5 to 15 words. Please ensure your title is not simply the assignment question you were given when you originally wrote the paper. After the title, the abstract is likely to be the first thing your audience reads and could help them decide whether to read the article or not. All papers for the Essex Student Journal require an abstract. These abstracts should be no longer than 200 words. The content of the abstract will depend on the discipline, but in general, abstracts describe the background, methods, and results, or in the case of an essay, the main argument and conclusions. It's important to remember that the abstract is not just another introduction, it should summarise the entire paper. As mentioned, it's crucial to think about your audience when preparing your paper for submission. The audience will be unknown to you, and this is especially important for a multidisciplinary journal like the Essex Student Journal. As a result, you shouldn't assume any specific knowledge and should try to avoid jargon. Where you do need to use jargon, make sure to explain the terms when they are first used. It's also really important to make it explicit in the introduction and abstract what the reader should expect from the paper. This includes what the format of the paper is. For example, if it's a more descriptive piece, then say that. If it's an explanatory case study, then say that as well. It can even help to give some explanation of why this format has been chosen, or what that format allows you to do. For example, you might say, "This descriptive essay allows an exploration of the series of events that led to," or "This explanatory case study allows analysis of why." Giving this kind of direction to the reader helps to manage their expectations and makes the purpose of your paper clear. The introduction thus becomes crucial for guiding your audience. As mentioned, letting the reader know what format to expect is recommended in the introduction to start guiding the reader. This also helps the peer reviewer. You can also help to guide the audience in the introduction by giving some background to the topic, for example including definitions of keywords and giving a summary of the current landscape in your topic. The introduction should also explain why you have written the paper, what the scope is, and why someone should read it. Aside from the introduction, using headings can be really useful for keeping the reader on track. Headings may not have been used in the original assignment, but where the audience is less familiar with the topic, they can be really useful. If you choose not to use headings, this might be the case if you choose an essay format, make sure the initial sentences of new paragraphs and/or sections guide the reader through your argument. A great way to do this is to use topic sentences. Topic sentences are the first sentence of a paragraph that provide an overview of that paragraph. They're crucial for guiding the reader through your work and are a good way to tweak your writing before submitting it to make it suitable for a published piece. It's also a good idea to read critically through your work before submitting and check that it is concise. Sometimes when writing an assignment, authors can get carried away in their thoughts, but when tweaking your writing for publication, you need to be concise to keep the reader's interest. Writing concisely is a skill, and it takes practice. But if your writing is concise, it's easier for the reader to follow your argument. Here are 3 tips for writing concisely. Tip 1. Start sentences with the subject. This ensures you get straight to the point and makes it clear to the reader what the purpose of the sentence is. Tip 2. Swap phrases for single words. For example, find out becomes investigate or explore, or look into becomes analyse. Tip 3. Keep sentences to roughly 25 to 30 words maximum and paragraphs to roughly 250 to 300 words. Break longer sentences into 2 or even 3 where you can. When writing concisely, try to focus on one idea at a time. Discussing too many factors together can confuse the reader and makes your work more difficult to read. Now let's briefly explore the publishing process for the Essex Student Journal. On the slide, you can see a visual representation of the Essex Student Journal's publishing process. The first step of the process is for the author to submit their paper. The editor then screens the paper. If the editor thinks the paper isn't suitable for the Essex Student Journal, it may be rejected straight away in what is known as a desk rejection. Usually some guidance will be given by the editor on how to tweak the paper to make it suitable for peer review. If the editor believes the paper is suitable for the journal, they will assign it to 1 or 2 peer reviewers. The reviewers will be University of Essex postgraduate students, so it's important you have anonymised your work before submission. The Essex Student Journal operates a double-blind peer review process, which means the authors' and reviewers' identities are unknown to each other. Once the reviewer has been assigned the paper, they will read through the work and leave comments and recommendations for both the author and the editor. The reviewer then passes these comments back to the editor, who assesses the comments and reviews the reviewer's decision. Assuming the paper has not been rejected, the editor then passes the comments on to the author, who addresses the comments and makes any suggested changes to their paper. It is then sent back to the editor, who can either pass the paper back to the reviewer for another review round, or move the paper on to the copy editing stage. Once the paper is in copy editing, the final tweaks are made to ensure the paper is ready for publication. The author then checks the final version of the paper before it is accepted for publication. When you, as the author, receive your paper back from the peer review stage, there are 3 decisions that can have been made. The first is accept with minor revisions, where small tweaks and changes will be needed. The second is accept with major revisions, where larger changes will be needed. This could include rewriting some paragraphs or adding in some new content. The third decision that could have been made is to reject your paper. This is where the reviewer does not feel your paper is ready to be published by the journal. In all 3 cases, the editor will give some further advice on what to do next. Each decision should therefore be useful for improving your writing and give you a helpful experience of the publishing process. Thanks for taking the time to learn about preparing to submit a paper to the Essex Student Journal. If you have any questions about any of the content of this video or about the Student Journal in general, please do get in touch. You can contact us via email, and we are also on Facebook and Twitter. We look forward to reading lots of great submissions to the Essex Student Journal soon.